two speakers. The first are from Waste Oil Recyclers, Brandon and Jim. Brandon is a class of 2005 Westchester alum, a history major, correct?
Correct, yes.
Correct, right. So you do not have to obviously be a business major to be an entrepreneur, and it's great to see you reaching back to the university to help hopefully motivate and inspire some of you. We have another program at 2 o'clock from a school representative talking about a mobile plus social equation. I encourage you to stay for the events between events and enjoy the second one as well. So without any further ado, I will turn it over to run in the seat. Or Jim, sorry.
It's okay. I'll just have to play. I said I didn't need it.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out here today. Thank you, Matt and Monica, for putting this together. I graduated from Westchester in 2005, came here in 2001, so I completed it in 4 years, which I'm proud of. From Scranton, Pennsylvania, and came down here because I wanted to start a band with my cousin, who lived a few miles from here in Coatesville, and got stuck in Killinger Hall my freshman year, and I didn't want to be. I don't know if there's anyone else here who's been in the 24-hour quiet room. And so my beginning days at Westchester were kind of dramatic for me, to cripple in 24-hour quiet dorm, when I was supposed to be, breaking away from all the rules of life. But it all worked out, and I had all of my history classes, and some great teachers at Westchester, a lot of great professors. Some of I wish could be here today. I know that one of them has a class later. Udell, who's a philosophy professor, a theoretical philosophy class I recommend. And I actually just saw, everyone here a business major? Dr. Hardy, who was the head of the history department at the time, he just walked by, but he wouldn't remember me. Graduated college. I was working at a jewelry store in town, Red Jewelry, which is still there to this day, and I was an apprentice jeweler. Kind of was unsure what I wanted to do with my life. As a history major, really, your options are sort of limited unless you want to be a teacher, and I didn't have a teaching certification. So one day I was at Fenario's coffee shop and started to talk to some people that were playing music, and they had an open mic night, and some friends of Jim, I started talking to them, hanging out with them, and that's how eventually I met Jim. And he was already collecting grease, and yeah, that was it.
It wasn't that back there yet.
So it was a small van with a trash pump and a tote. It was really an interesting setup. Nothing, it didn't look professional anyway. But I thought, hey, that sounds like a good idea. Let's start something where we collect the cooking oil from restaurants and we sell it for fuel. Fuel's something that is going to get more expensive. Wrong now, actually, but in my mind at the time, fuel was only going to get more expensive, and it's definitely a commodity that if we can get our hands on it, it sounds like a great business plan to me. So I asked Jim if I could kind of partner up with him and do sales for nothing, and return for a position in the business if we were able to make it work. So he had some faith in me, and I was working for free, so it was kind of a no-brainer. And Jim had a $5,000 credit card and a van pumping it, and that's how kind of things started. That's my background, and I kind of brought it up to where I met Jim. I can let him maybe give his background a little bit.
Sure. Brendan and I met just because we were out partying, the same people and like music. It's interesting how you meet the people that, carry on with you through your entire life. But it's definitely who you know is something that I've definitely learned since I've been doing this. It's the relationships and the people that really, help stretch you. My background, I'm 38 years old, and I graduated from University of Kansas in 1999. 1999 with a bachelor in anthropology. So another major that doesn't necessarily lend itself to career advancement unless you're going to go into teaching or other fields, get your PhD, whatnot. I came out to Pennsylvania 2002. My girlfriend at the time was studying in lawn gardens. I just came out here to see what the East Coast was like. While I was out here, I ended up having a variety of jobs, one of which was installing solar panels when the solar market was still happening, and I was in an environmental business and always cared about environmental issues. Was very happy to be doing that kind of work. But in doing that work and driving all over Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, and New Jersey, we were burning a lot of fuel. And I thought we could be an even more environmentally friendly business if we could, burn less fuel or be more environmentally conscious and how we got around. And that's what led me to purchase a 1983 Mercedes-Benz for $1,100, drive it back to Westchester area, and convert it to run on used cooking oil. So it was a hobby project that I was trying to show my bosses at the time, the people I was working for at the time, an alternative. I was trying to prove the technology to them so that they might adopt that in their business. Right around that time is when the grant funding and the subsidies for the solar industry all disappeared. And I got laid off as a result. And all I had at the time was a grease car and some minor capability to pick up grease and put it in my car. Not having a job and having that, seeing that there might be some potential for me to be able to make some money on the side and not get a real job at the time, I started to form more of a business around that and get more clients than I maybe necessarily needed to keep my own car going. And it started to actually turn into a business. At that point, it became too much for me to do. I couldn't collect oil, I couldn't sell to clients, I couldn't build a business plan, I couldn't do all of that together. And luckily enough, Brendan just came along and said, "Hey man, I think what you're doing sounds really cool, and I want to get in on it." And from that point on, it made the business capable of even growing into a business. It was really just a hobby at that point.
There was a lot of luck involved for me. First time I actually met Jim and realized what he was doing, I just happened to walk home from the jewelry store down a certain alleyway where he was with one of my friends having a beer on the porch. He was dressed up in a suit.
I think it was just a green shirt. I only had a green shirt. I had a pair of pants and a green shirt.
He was dressed up. He was not looking as normal, so let's put it that way. So I asked him, why you dressed up, and that's how he kind of gave me the spiel of what he was trying to do, and I thought it was great. So that was 2006.
2006, late 2005, 2006. At that point, like I said, neither of us had any business background. Neither of us had any real idea of what we were doing.
And we knew that. So one of the things that my mom recommended to me was, she's an insurance agent, and she insures a group called SCORE in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And SCORE is a nonprofit that has Tom Thomas back right there. He was our SCORE advisor. People who were in the business world their entire life donate their time to help people who have no idea what they're doing potentially in business. And Tom kind of brought us in and guided us and helped us, figure out what we needed to do. The whole, learning how to read a profit and loss, or what we should be looking at, and the financials, and making us go out and do homework and bring it back to them. And that really helped us mature significantly.
And there's a variety of organizations like SCORE. At the same time, we were working with the Chester County Economic Development Council, which is another potentially free service that helps you build a business plan, helps you figure out some of the ins and outs of starting a new business. And there's a wide range of different services available if you just go out and look for them. But the Economic Development Council and SCORE, we didn't have a business plan until we talked to those people. And we didn't even know what a business plan was. We had a great idea. We had, I think, business minds. We could balance our checkbook. Some people can't do that. We saw the value of the product and knew that we could, collect it for this and sell it for more, and that was a good thing and would be something that would work. But in terms of putting all that on paper and, structuring the whole thing, having people that had been there before, it was really, really helpful.
So,
Do you guys, I guess you don't know what we do either necessarily. We didn't really describe what waste oil recyclers is. So briefly, we collect oil.
yeah, we collect oil from places like Sykes and Lawrence Center and Tech up in town.
Jitters.
Jitters was our original meeting grounds, actually. A lot of work got done there. Taco Tuesdays, turned 21 was worth it. So we take that, we process that cooking oil into a product that is easily made into biodiesel. And we sell to a biodiesel refinery. A majority of the product that we produce is sold to Hero VX, which is a biodiesel refinery in Erie. So we actually fill rail cars up with cooking oil, ship it up to Erie, gets made into biodiesel, and it's distributed mostly in Pennsylvania.
So it's exactly right. We guarantee that everything's domestically produced and domestically used. So previous to collection businesses like us, there were rendering companies that would come in and they would take that cooking oil along with animal carcasses and fats, and they would render that into animal food, dog food, or cosmetics, some paint materials, really, really kind of nasty stuff. Animal carcasses and whatnot. We stay away from that and just focus on vegetable oil. So we came into a marketplace that had renders that had been in business for 150 years, very entrenched businesses, very established businesses already, handling this product, this commodity. And it was only recently where biofuels started to take off and have a market of its own. And, we were able to move into that marketplace because we saw the value of keeping the vegetable oil separate from all those other rendered materials, and that there'd be much higher resale value for that vegetable oil if we handled it that way, and that we stayed away from rendering other things and just dealt with the vegetable oil. It's something that bigger companies couldn't do at the time and didn't recognize the value of. They've been doing the same thing for 150 years. They weren't going to change anything. They were profitable. They had all their technology. They had everything figured out. Being small at the time and seeing that opportunity, we were able to move in and establish ourselves in a relatively new market. When we started that business, when we started doing this business, it was something that people typically paid money for. So PF Chang's, for example, was paying $5,000–6,000 a year to have the oil removed. We came in and we were charging $150 for the year, which we tried to give them free service when we started because that was the whole model. It was going to be a free service. We really didn't need to pay people, but people didn't believe the service could be legitimate if it was free. So we had to charge $150 to convince them that it was legitimate, which is hilarious, really. So, PF Chang's, no, we don't want anything to do with it. I came back 2 months later and was like, yeah, we'll give you we'll charge you $150. Oh, all of a sudden you're legitimate. We'll use your service. Yeah, if you go to this guy. Just pull over and click it. And jitters pulled up there for a second.
So I guess we slowly progressed. We had what was the name of the fire company? West Bradford, the van.
Oh yeah, West Bradford.
So we purchased a used van from the West Bradford Fire Company, fitted it with a 250-gallon tote and trash pump. That didn't work that well. And I went out and got restaurants, and Jim went out and collected the oil, basically. And he would, go out 5 times a day, 4 times a day, drive back to
Where were we then? Yeah, we started in my backyard. I lived on a farm out near Coatesville, in Coatesville. And then we went from the farm to this guy's greenhouse. We went from this guy's greenhouse to, we used to have another partner, went to his backyard. And then from there, we were able to move into the warehouse area that we are right now. But it was very much, I think what Brendan's trying to say, it was very small and it was kind of slapdash. We threw it together and we were always moving around and shuffling our stuff all over the place because we couldn't afford rent. We didn't, have, a loan to work off of or any resources. It was just that credit card.
driving down to Philly 3 times in one day. So driving down to Philly from about 30 minutes west of here, 3 times. So down, back, traffic, everything else. So there was a lot of people have given up at that point, in my opinion, and I'm happy I didn't have to do the driving for that. So we eventually found a property in Modena, Pennsylvania. We're there.
Right outside of Coatesville.
Right outside South Coastal. And we set up shop there.
We were lucky enough that someone would even rent to us. We could pay rent now, but no one wanted to rent to us because of the nature of our business. You know, it's a mess. No one wanted to see a mess on their property.
So while we moved into Modena, we set up the shop. We started, growing our customer base pretty significantly. It was kind of a map of Westchester, which was what basically, the beginning for us, because it was easy access, and I was a student here, and I went out and talked to the restaurant owners a lot, and we were able to kind of get a majority of the restaurants in Westchester. We actually developed our own software right around this time.
Yeah, when we moved into the warehouse, as 2007, 2008, the market started to climb significantly. The price of grease was going through the roof, which was great for us. We were starting to get to the point where we could invest in technology that was going to help us do more with less. So we were able to buy our first septic truck at that time. So we collect all of our oil in septic style trucks, big vacuum trucks. So we pull up to the parallel container, suck it out, and there's probably some pictures on the slideshow that we're going to just show some pictures later. But by being able to get that truck that had a 1,600 gallon capacity versus the 250 gallon capacity, by being able to get that small warehouse space and establish ourselves that way, I wasn't driving to Philly 3-4 times a day. I was driving to Philly once, and then a lot of other stuff we moved on in the meantime. There was a point when Brendan several times through Brendan's sales efforts, where he would pack on so many sales so quickly that I'd just freak out. Like, you gotta stop. This is before we were really getting paid either. So we weren't getting paid. We were, paying for the equipment, the fuel, but we weren't taking a salary. But yeah, we had to put him on hold a bunch, because you go out and get 10 new accounts. It's like, geez, how am I going to afford 10 barrels? $20 barrels. I don't have $200 to go get the barrels and put it at the location. You got to take a break. But once we got that truck, once we got that space, once we had that extra time, he had free reign to do whatever he wanted. He could just go take over the world, because that wasn't, the logistics were there to be able to actually do the business.
And that kind of brings us to, I think, Westchester University at that point. Our first real big break, I guess you can say. Aramark here. There was a dining service director by the name of Garrett Flad, who gave us a shot to collect the cooking oil here. He thought it was a great idea. So this was the first Aramark account for us, actually, was Westchester University. And it kind of snowballed from there, and eventually, funny enough, we got Lincoln Financial Field next. A couple universities, other universities, Immaculata, I think. And then it came to Lincoln Financial Field, which was our first big Aramark account. And Jim and I were in Chicago a couple months ago, and we met with he works for another company now, Levy Restaurants, is like the Aramark of the Midwest. And he met with us, made a couple beers, and he told me that honest to God truth why he gave us a shot at Lincoln Financial Field was because he was a Westchester alum and I was as well. So that kind of Westchester helped us out again, because the guy in charge of Lincoln Financial Field happened to come here and thought basically that we shouldn't be collecting the grease there because he thinks we were too rinky-dink, but he'll give us a shot because I went to Westchester. And he flat out said that to us, which I didn't know until a couple months ago. So we started getting these larger accounts, getting in with all the universities, getting in with the Citizens Bank Park, and the Wells Fargo Center, and then eventually we packing on 50, 60 accounts a month, kind of leading us.
And sorry to cut in, but to give some perspective on what Aramark means to us, and, they're a very huge company. They have multiple locations all over the world. It went from us getting somewhere like Jitters that produces maybe 30 gallons of grease a month to Lincoln Financial Field, which every time there's a game we get 600,000 gallons of grease. So in multiple locations like that.
That used to be, actually, in Lincoln Financial Field, just to give them a little more credit, they've actually started, how green they are with the solar panels and everything else, they even take that to the next level with the cooking oil. So they actually bring in a company that filters out their cooking oil now, so they get an extra game out of it or something, so they're not being, the oil's perfectly fine to still fry with, but they really are, walking the walk when it comes to trying to be sustainable as a team.
But people giving us those chances and that relationship, not only the Westchester alum relationship, but being able to talk to someone and really believe in what you're pitching, and that's something that Brendan has a tremendous skill with. I mean, he reads people very well. He likes to talk to people.
Not in this form. I'm not good at this.
You can tell he's very good at being very genuine and describing the service in a way that really relates to whoever he's trying to sell it to. And when you, at least in our experience, if you pitch yourself and you're honest about it, and you do believe in what you're trying to sell, people see that. They see that you're not just trying to swindle them, and you get a chance like Aaron Mark that turns in, and then you do well with that. Then they're like, oh wow, I'm happy I gave this guy a chance. We can give him another chance, another chance, another chance. And that's, so, Brendan, in terms of pitching the service and being genuine and explaining it well to people, is the one half, and then the other half is providing that quality service and following up with his promises. So many times Brendan would tell me, hey man, we got to really step it up right here. These people are really going out on a limb for us. And I, on the other hand, do that. And that would just perpetuate the whole thing. Sorry.
So here we are today. I guess is the business and society class here?
No, they're not. Oh, so now you shut up.
No, that one was wait. I was going to kind of pull up on the green card.
Sure.
Are they coming or not?
At 9, prior to that.
Okay.
They met earlier.
No problem. So you can kind of get an idea of where we are today. All these pins represent a client. We have over 3,500 clients at this point. I see before
Yeah, we went from nothing to, over 3,500 accounts. We're picking up 1.8 million gallons of oil a year. We have 31 employees. It's turned into a real business, and it's not just something, Brendan was alluding to the garden project. We don't just collect grease. One of the things Brendan always said at the beginning, it wasn't about just selling the service, it was about providing solutions, being a solution provider to our clients. They needed someone to pick up their recycling, their plastic recycling, and find that person for them. They wanted to know where they could get better vegetables, he'd find that person. So he was always working those relationships and always looking at other avenues to make the sale, other avenues to make the business grow. And as a result, we've developed our own software package that we're selling to people now. We have a software company. There's the garden project.
You see how handsome it used to be.
We have a property holding company where we have tenants now, and we're building, and we have built a green industrial park that houses other like-minded businesses. And we try and act as a business incubator for businesses, they're starting out like we were. Give other people that same opportunity to, get off the ground.
And basically, the building that I said we moved into when people didn't want to rent to us, we have now, we purchased that property, and there's a company called Organic Mechanics, who's not a Westchester alum, but he lives in Westchester, named Mark Highland, and he does organic peat-free potting soil, and they take up the majority of our warehouse space at this point. So, like Jim said, we're kind of an incubator for a lot of other small businesses.
They started very similarly to us, and they started right alongside us. We knew them when we started, they were starting their business, and they got to a point where they needed warehouse space, so it was a really nice fit that way.
So this is our shop now. This is our shop in the early years. Now there's no room at all in that.
Filled with tanks.
Filled with tanks. And then we bought the adjacent property to the one we just discussed about Mark Highland and the Organic Mechanics, and it was kind of it was definitely dilapidated. Not touched for years and years and years. The doors were mounds of dirt. Rather than fix a door, the guy just piled dirt in front of it to stop people from getting in. So we took that over and we started police, this is our service garage, and the office for the service manager and the dispatch manager. There you go. Who's loving it now?
And what you see on the front of there is a stage. So over the course of several years, every year we built a little bit more of the stage. Brendan plays music, a lot of other people in our organization play music. It was natural for us to want to have a stage. But these are the things that aren't maybe necessarily, part of the business plan, but breed, creativity and give the employees something to really appreciate. We eat a lot of lunch on the stage and use it for a lot of different events and has a lot of different benefits.
And this is the rain sleeves night. Last winter was there. So when you have your own business, you're going to have a lot of moments that you feel like it's time to give up and we can't do this, it's impossible. And we kind of, put our nose to the grindstone, and we actually had a flood this year too, which destroyed our property. And we were able to, bounce back because, the people we work with really are just excellent employees, and we're lucky. So here's some of our clients, Geno's. Oh, so here's the Mulgreen Garden project.
Yeah, so the Organic Mechanics located with us, co-located with us. We shared some office space early on, and they needed to do seed trials and plant trials with their materials, so they started throwing their potting soil all around the property, growing the plants, taking pictures for their marketing materials. We all like food, so we participated and helped in their gardening so that we could all get produce out of that. None of us had a garden in our backyard, so made a garden around the office, and every year that was something that just, snowballed and grew because people were into it. People liked the fact that they could come to work and there was a beautiful garden and they could pick some lettuce on the way out the door. And we started to get more and more participation from businesses on site and people that worked there, as well as people from outside the community that would come in just to help. We started having a garden night every Tuesday or Wednesday night, depending on the season. And the gardens have grown to many times the size of that initial bed. There's every inch of ground that we have is covered by gardens at this point. We did over 2,600 pounds of organic produce this year that was donated to the Chester County Food Bank. We're working more closely with nonprofits and charitable organizations now to donate a lot of that produce. And up until this year, it was done completely on a volunteer basis. There was no full-time employee. No one got paid to do anything. It was just people that would show up and do this gardening. This year we hired a 19-year-old guy, Will Colvin, to be the garden guy. But it just shows that Brendan came on for free, worked pro bono. The community came on for free to make the food. I think if you really believe in what you're doing, you have the right idea, you can get people to do a lot for you just based on that. And to keep that passion going, that's one of the reasons why we do things like the garden project on the stage and some other things we do, because it really does act as a great motivator.
That being said, every Tuesday, starting in April, if anyone's bored, it includes free dinner. Starts at 5:30 or 6.
Yeah, 5 to 9. We have bonfires.
It's fun. There's Bill. The glasses. Jim also likes to make these.
So that's made out of some old barrels. So one of the things that we do there too is repurpose. That's a big part of our business, repurposing something that didn't have a lot of value into something that maybe has value. So one of the guys that works on site, he has a woodworking business. We just had a couple beers in a bonfire one night and started tearing cans apart. And now we have all these big metal flowers. I think that several of those were in the Philadelphia Flower Show this year alongside Organic Mechanics and stuff.
So there you see the garden there. Here's everyone. Some are still with us, some aren't.
We have extremely low attrition with the clients that we service. We lose almost no accounts to competition. Unfortunately, the restaurant industry is what it is, and a lot of places go out of business every year. So we don't lose our clients. We really don't lose our employees either. There's very few people that have decided to leave or have to leave for whatever reason because they get really what they're doing. They really believe in what they're doing. And there's a lot of space when we hire people for someone that isn't going to be interested in their day-to-day. We don't want you to work with us unless you're not going to be passionate about what you're doing and really appreciate your day. If it's only a job to you, you're probably not going to stick around.
One important thing, sorry, we're going like back and forth between garden projects and click and oil, but the one important thing we forgot to mention about the garden project and the business and society thing, that's why I was hoping they were here, is the Coastal Youth Initiative.
Yeah.
So, we have 4 kids from the coastal area school district. I think the previous year was 6?
7.
7. So these kids basically donate their time in the summer. It's supposed to be like a preparation.
Work training, workplace training.
So that they would work at our facility, tending the garden, working on some artwork, some murals for our location. And basically, they learn how to work a garden and normal day-to-day work skills. They were there in the morning, they left every afternoon, and on Friday, the Coastal Youth Initiative would have a program where the students learned how to write a business plan. So they were really prepping themselves to enter the business world, or basically, I mean, it's a huge feather in the cap when they're filling out their college application. But these kids were great. We had a lot of fun with them. We brought a chef up from some of our restaurants every week or twice a week. So we brought like the chef in Budokan at Steven Starr's restaurants, came up and he took stuff from the garden, showed the kids how to prep the food, make something with the vegetables from the garden. We had a local farm that donated meat, and he showed them how to prep and cook meat. We had a lot of Westchester chefs participated as well. Ram's Head did, and the High Street Cafe both participated and were very helpful. And I think really the kids really gravitated towards that and had a lot of fun with it.
And I was just going to say, these things that we're talking about now, outside of our core business, the Garden Project, the Coastal Youth Initiative, these other things, they all have some sort of tie-in, even if it's small. So like the Garden Project, we were spending a lot of money to throw away garbage that came in with the oil. We would pick up the oil, there'd be fryer bits, and meat bits, and chicken bones, and all these weird things would come in with oil. And that was costly for us to get rid of. So we started composting that on site, and that was at the same time we were starting the Garden Project. And all the gardens on site are made from garbage, our garbage. So we're picking up someone else's garbage, we're turning it into fuel, and the garbage from that process we're turning into gardens. So having the gardens actually serves a purpose in helping us get rid of our waste. Working with organizations like this and doing good works has a distinct PR value to it. We're not regulated by the DEP in our business until recently. DEP showed up on our site 6 months ago, said, hey, you need all these permits. Didn't anyone ever tell you this? I was like, well, no. I didn't know. We tried to do our due diligence, our research, and we contacted people, and we tried to make sure we were doing things right. But because we were doing these good works and they saw that we were genuine in what we were trying to do for the environment and the community around us, DEP has been very helpful in getting everything compliant, and it could have been a situation where they're shutting down our business. But instead, they see all this good work we're doing and they want to help. So, the Garden Project and some of these other things have this big other benefit, dealing with regulatory agencies, but also just in terms of convincing our customer base that we're the best business to choose and that we're honest about what we're doing.
In conjunction with Victory Brewing Company, also this year we did a brandy wine cleanup. A lot of participants. Victory was great. They were very in tune with trying to clean up the brandy wine and really put a lot of effort and brought out their entire staff. Pretty much anyone who wanted to come out, they gave a half day or a day off to come and clean up the brandy wine with us. Parties. We have an event every year, Energy Independence Day, and the two events, and the Art Harvest Party. I'll make sure that I'll let you know what the date is, so you can pass it on to everyone. If you ever want to come up and see the facility, what is Energy Wednesday, every April?
Every April.
Every April, so, give you the dates, everyone's welcome to come, we have live music, some food trucks that are out here, potentially will be up there. People that we service, collect cooking oil from, and have food trucks come up. We have canning
Workshops.
thank you.
A lot of why, back to, why we do these things, the PR associated with it, the community outreach, we've always truly believed that, a business needs to be a good citizen to the community that it belongs to. So when we do things like this, we're in a very, very impoverished area. 25% of people in Modena are below the poverty line. There was no industry there were no jobs. It was really beneficial for us when we first moved in because rent was cheap, But since then, we've tried to do the gardens and we've tried to do these different events to not only, sell our organization and act as marketing, but as a way to outreach the local community and give them an opportunity to learn and, have jobs in some cases and just see what we're doing. So it is, having a party is sometimes the best way to, market your business. Yeah. We just, I mentioned that I worked for the solar industry before, Waste Solar Recyclers, and that was a business that was completely based, in Pennsylvania, it was completely based on subsidy and grant funding. The business couldn't exist otherwise, and when that money disappeared, my job disappeared. So when we got into collecting cooking oil, while there were some government subsidies and grants and things like that, we never had a lot of faith in that, nor were we going to base our whole business model on any of that. It was going to be a stable business, and if we could leverage some other funds from some other places, we would do that. But we made sure that we were building an energy business, a green business, that was a business rather than something that was wholly dependent on just handouts. And as a result, we've been able to withstand the test of time where other businesses that were maybe more based on those handouts that went away. So that's been a good thing for us. That being said, recently we heard about, through Thomas initially suggested we talked to some local politicians about getting the budget for some funding for a rail spur project. We found out about a DOT grant for construction of new rail, and we were awarded $270,000 to build a rail siding on our property. So there's already rail nearby, and the DOT saw it as a good project, and we were able to, we just started that project yesterday, really.
We had a limited amount of time to put it together. We had a week,
4 days.
4 days to put it together because we had no idea that this grant was available. And we actually went to a Westchester business, Walnut Street Labs, out in Walnut Street. And they helped us put together the package that we presented in front of what was the DP? It was PennDOT. In front of PennDOT, and we were awarded the grant.
And one of the main focuses of that package was a lot of the other things we were doing other than just collecting oil. Rather than shipping by truck, a tractor trailer 6,000 gallons, a rail car is 24,000 gallons. Uses a fraction of the energy to transport that material. There's a lot less logistics and planning and coordinating with the train than with tractor trailers. Great benefits. It's going to be a really huge increase in efficiency for us as a business. And DOT saw that. But they also saw these other things we were doing and thought that would make it a model project for them to get this money. So by seeing the garden project, by seeing some of these other things, it helped us get the grant.
Questions? Want to talk about energy? Go ahead, yes, please.
So I'm curious, at what point do you outgrow your site and replicate it in another location?
That's a good question. With the rail siding, that's decades away. By being able to just bring a rail car on site that has 24,000 gallon capacity, that would be, we would just keep bringing rail cars on site. So we have a modular storage.
I got you.
And so that was definitely a concern. I mean, we were anticipating growing out of our site in the next 2 years before we had the rail site. So we went from having, I had 10 square feet in my backyard to, 15,000 square feet warehouse, completely filled with tanks, oil, machinery, and equipment. And we were actually approaching critical mass there, and lucky we got the grant.
Is that spur long enough, 200 feet, so you can
So we can store 3 cars, it's going to be exactly 200 feet, and that is good for our normal day-to-day operation. But just adjacent to that, there's a few thousand feet of unused track that the rail company has agreed to let us use. So 1,000 feet, that's a lot of cars, and that's that modular storage I spoke of.
So you call that map of all those restaurants, you call those your clients, but I think it was your suppliers, correct? That you're actually supplying with the oil that you turn around and sell. So you only use one buyer a year?
We have several, but I mean, the majority of what we ship does go to Erie. We choose to stick with Erie because they're in the state for other reasons.
And they're all paying for you to take your oil away, or some are still waiting for free?
Yeah, I wish. So as I said before, we started out, it was, they paid us a small amount of money. It went to a free service. And now it's the suppliers or our clients recognize it as a commodity, and it is a commodity. So we actually pay them every quarter. So every time we pick up a gallon of oil, we send them a check. Any other questions?
So, how do you generate revenue?
How do we generate revenue?
Yeah, if you're paying to pick up the oil, are you selling it to the company you deliver to?
Yes, basically, yeah, we pay a percentage of what we would make to the client, to the restaurant, and we process that oil, and it goes to a biodiesel refinery where we sell it for more money than it costs us to collect it and pay the customer.
And that's something that is it's a market-driven commodity. And right now, it's extremely low. It's 20 cents a gallon or 20 cents a pound versus 2008 where it's 45 cents a pound. So when we're calculating where that revenue is going to be coming from, when we're trying to figure out what kind of margin we have to play with, we're always watching the market too. And very early on, we decided to invest everything that we were making back into the business and back into efficiency and things that were going to make the business tighter. And as a result of that upfront expenditure, when we do have a market that's half of what it's normally, we're still able to stay in business. 2008 is a great year because you have this big wide margin. And you just take that money and reinvest it in the business so that when that market crashes, you're lean and you're able to survive. A lot of other businesses didn't survive because, they weren't thinking that way, they weren't thinking long term. Yeah.
Did I hear you say that just, okay, that all of this started as a hobby, like it's just something you were interested in? So I'm very interested in hobby-based businesses that turn out like yours. At what point did you realize, hey, I have something here that I can do something what, maybe make a living from?
Question.
I think pretty early on, it was, when people started calling us, like when we were soliciting people, but like when people started calling us saying, hey, I hear you're doing something cool and I have a restaurant. I was like, oh, okay. So I think just,
The financials still didn't particularly make sense at that point, right? But people wanted us, wanted our service. Because really, the business was, like Jim said, it was a bunch of renderers who've been in business for 150 years. They, talked to each other and played nice with each other. So, the stage was pretty much set that the restaurant was going to get, screwed as best as possible. And that was the situation. I'm not going to pick up your cooking oil until you pay me the $150. Or, I'll be there Friday and they come on, the following Wednesday. Really, because the restaurant owner had nowhere else to turn to at that point. So you had 3 choices, and they all pretty much gave you the same thing.
So when you were deciding to quit your day job or your day job or whatever it was, did you sleep over it? Or was it an uncomfortable decision, or did you just not, hey, I got to do this?
oh yeah, no, I think for all of us, I was out of a job. I was making my job, and I was lucky I was in a situation where I had a work trading scenario at a farm I lived on. So a lot of my overhead was taken care of by me working at home. So, but that, my wife and, family thought I was crazy, but they were willing to, put up with it for a couple of years. And Brendan, when, wasn't getting paid, how do you do that? You have to make a sacrifice. You of stress and a lot of sleep loss. But, you know, and it wasn't for several years until we started showing profit and really taking salary. A pretty big commitment up front. You had a question?
Yeah, I was curious about talking about how the market influences how you set your fees and your revenues. And so you went from collecting a fee from these organizations, your suppliers, to now you paying them. Is that how do you calculate that fee? And is it a fixed fee or is it fluctuated by greater market forces? And what are those forces?
Well, usually it's not a fee. It's a fee for us, I guess. But it is usually fixed. But, you know, our language in our contract gives us some flexibility based upon, taxes or market conditions. But we try to keep everyone, when we go out and sell, we have a maximum, my sales team has a maximum amount that they're allowed to offer a location. It's a number that we feel we can gain new customers, traction, and gaining new customers, and also feel comfortable that we can maintain that price in many market fluctuations. And it's also it's trying to find a price and locking it in so that potentially whatever the market does doesn't really have any effect on your business. You actually want it to go lower because it's hurting your competition more than it's hurting you. You're not affected by the price.
One thing that we're starting to do this year is more tie it to the market rate for obvious reasons. But there is a definite benefit to having a fixed rate from the customer's point of view. They know that what they're getting. They know they don't need to consider what the market's doing. They know what they're getting and they're happy with that. And it helps us with those customers.
At the end of the day, it really doesn't affect the bottom line.
The restaurants, the clients, bottom line.
Not at all. It's like, at the end of the day, there's people out there that offer a lot more money than we do. But once you get the customer, you keep them by having a good customer service, by answering questions, answering the phone, things of that nature. Really help you develop a relationship with your customer. And at the end of the day, they're not going to switch because they're going to save $300 a year. And it's an unknown if the person's actually going to come and collect their oil and pay them.
In terms of us tracking all that, there's so many different variables that go into that market shift. This year, for example, there was a really bountiful harvest in the Midwest, and there's a lot of virgin oil as a result of that. Because there's more virgin oil, people are less likely to buy our product, which is slightly lower grade than the virgin oil. So, Brendan is always looking at potential, agricultural forecasts and what the potential harvests are going to be. What's going on overseas? Is there a big need for biofuel? In Europe right now, are other people going to be shipping their stuff out of the country? And there's going to be an open market for us. There's several different things. Right now, it's EPA. EPA has a bunch of in their RFS2, their renewable fuel standard program. They're changing a lot of standards for how much biofuel is used in the United States, and that has an effect on the market.
It's the 20th of November, and they still have not finalized the renewable fuel standard for 2014. So it really threw a wrench in the biodiesel business this year. They kind of backtracked from the original proposal from the Bush administration. Congress set a whole year-by-year number of what biodiesel and renewable fuels should be, and they kind of backpedaled on their initial release of what they were thinking was going to be for this year, and then it kind of went to a comment period, and it just hasn't been released yet. So everyone's still holding their breath in the biofuels world.
Tremendous amount of indecision and worry, and people are, they're not going to be signing contracts for this year until they hear about it. So like everyone's business is on hold. And here we are, 1.8 million gallons in our back pocket with nowhere to sell it. So those are definite concerns.
I think you had a question.
Sure. What's the difference between your biofuels versus fossil fuels?
Biofuel versus what?
Fossil fuels?
Fossil fuels are 65% more polluting. If you're burning petroleum-based diesel, You're putting sulfur, carbon dioxide in there, other pollutants. The vegetable oil-based fuels that we deal in, they have much less of those pollutants. We produce the same, burning a gallon of our fuel produces the same amount of carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas, but it's a carbon neutral cycle. So you grow a plant, you make some oil, you burn the oil, it makes carbon dioxide, and then the plant needs the carbon dioxide to make the oil. So it's a closed loop, so you're not adding any more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. So yeah, diesel's a lot dirtier. Diesel doesn't have as much lubricity as it used to have. We used to put sulfur in diesel to make it lubricate the internals on the diesel engine. They've been taking that sulfur out because it causes asthma, so it's a pollutant. And as they take that sulfur out of the diesel, ultra low sulfur diesel, you're seeing less longevity in diesel engines. Our fuel has all those lubricity properties, so it's cleaner to burn just inherently, and it has a lot more lubricity than even high sulfur diesel fuel. So by using biofuel, you're actually increasing the longevity of your diesel platform. You're putting some of that lubricity back into the system.
So is it cheaper buses? How cheap is it? Or how?
Right now, it's actually more expensive than if you were going to buy a gallon of biodiesel. It's slightly more expensive than a gallon of petroleum diesel,
But not always.
but not always. It's always close. It's right there. And a lot of that has to do with, a marketplace is still, biodiesel is still becoming something that stands on its own feet, that isn't beholden to what the EPA standards are. It's still very much affected by what the government regulations are, and that sometimes plays with that price a little bit.
Do you have any plans to diversify since you go to all these restaurants to maybe start finding the recyclables over there?
We actually have planned to diversify the finished product and not necessarily sell it for biofuel, and sell it for energy generation, or actually not sell it for, but use it for energy generation on our property. So we would install, how many megawatts? 6 megawatts of generators on our facility, and run straight cooking oil, not biodiesel, in those generators, and sell that back to people.
But it's a good point. With 3,500 restaurants in your Rolodex, what else could you sell them? We've talked about grease traps. We've talked about good cleaning. We've talked about recycling. We've talked about compost. We've talked about a bunch of different things. And anytime we come up with, anytime we think about that, we're like, it's just a whole other business. And one of the things that we learned very early on, came to the conclusion together, we wanted to collect oil and convert cars, make biodiesel, and have energy, and do all these different things. At some point, we decided, hey, we're just going to be really good at collecting oil, and the other stuff we'll figure out later. Right now, we're just going to get good at collecting oil. And then we were like, okay, we're good at collecting oil. Let's process it so we can get more margin out of it. And that's pretty much where that stopped. We're like, we're going to be collectors, we're going to be processors. All other stuff is really complicated. And really tried to stay focused on that, but it is a good point. I have this great client-based pull from.
How are you doing on collecting oil this year compared to a year ago?
You want to bring up that flip page? We've grown steadily every year, 25% roughly this year over last. And that's a pretty consistent growth curve over the past several years. The first few years of business, it's 400% growth, 600% growth. But pretty steadily year over year, we're growing 25%. Brendan's bringing up, this is Research. This is a software platform or a web-based data management platform that we developed in-house to help track and schedule. We were keeping everything on an Excel spreadsheet. And everyone learned Excel. Excel is the most powerful thing in the world, I'm convinced. But we were doing everything in Excel, and Chris Master-Polito saw how we were doing it. He was a software designer by hobby, not by trade. Saw what we were doing in Excel and said he could do it way better, and built us the initial platform so we can bring up all of our clients, all of the information about our business, all of the pertinent information about our business on our phone. on our wireless device on our computer. You know, that's been a real boon for our growth. What's the growth?
19% from over last year.
19%?
1.69 million gallons.
Does that equate to 19% more revenue?
The employees ask us that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
We empower all employees to have a lot of access to this information because it's a motivator. There's some neat graphs at the bottom. You know, there's individual stats. So you get this beneficial competition that's going on between drivers and between employees. But at the same time, you do have employees come to you and they're like, well, I want a raise. It's like, well, it's, you know, you just never know. Why do you think you get a raise? Because you guys are up 19%, so you must have a lot more money. Well, no, it doesn't work that way. For us, there's a lot of other increases that are taking place. So we're taking a lot more volume, but you know, fuel prices are going up. The rebates are you know, we keep to be competitive in the market. We spend a lot of money on rebates to our customers.
If fuel prices going up, you pay more for the reference of fuel. Don't you get more from the refinery?
You would think so. And, we sell based on the Jacobson Index, which is a
Fats and oil index that's been around forever. Bringing transparency to an opaque market is has nothing, no connection to the real world, in my opinion. But
so the market's very much driven by this index that isn't accurate.
and it's really, this market, 90% of this market is really controlled by the largest renderer in the country. Was that
Hatfield or?
Darling.
I mean, in my opinion, but you know, they have a lot of pull in the marketplace and can pretty much dictate price.
There's really no, while I said there are these things that we do see, like a big harvest, you know, there's going to be a lot of virgin oil in the market that we know that's going to have an effect. But day to day, it's a point of great contention with us that, you know, the index doesn't necessarily represent what's going on out there in the real world. That makes it very hard for us to plan. And you'll see these strange, I remember a couple years ago, there was this massive dip in the market, and Brendan called the Jacobsons, whoa, what are you guys doing? What happened here? You want to get some commentary on it? And it was the guy that did that in their organization was on vacation. And there's another guy that sat down for that week and was just kind of willy-nilly posting numbers. And the fact that so much rides on that, it's very hard to deal with. Having relationships with buyers like Hero BX somewhat mitigates that in the sense that, you know, you can work out above market deals with them and they understand the true value of it. You know what their need is, so you can kind of play that a little bit.
Back to data tracking, I mean, we can tell every new client that we brought on this year, you know, has brought us 163,000 gallons total. And the clients we lost 38,000 gallons. But our main attrition reason, by far, is out of business. So nothing that we can really do anything about. If we could, we have a lot of.
You have two different lost to competition.
One is a broken contract, one is a non-broken contract.
There's probably a very funny story in this one.
So, any other questions?